Welcome everybody to the 17th podcast from the People's Pundits, myself Kevin Clark and Ian Hart. And this week I'm pleased to say we are joined by our guest Andy Herriot, aka Albion legend, the Ferret. Now to the uninitiated Andy, including me, I guess for our listeners you need to explain 2 points in that sentence: Albion legend and Ferret.
Well, hello first of all, but there's one massive factual inaccuracy in that statement. That's the first part, of course.
You will always be a legend in my eyes.
A leg end, maybe a foot, yes, but not a legend. And the Ferret, okay, yes. That probably takes us back to about 1999 when the Albion went back to Withdean, or returned to Brighton to play at Withdean. It was great after the occasional foray to Gillingham to actually get back to Brighton. And I started going along regularly from the very first game. You know, the Mansfield 6-2 was it, I believe. Darren Freeman scoring a hat-trick. And took my son along with me, and we went to home and away games. Now, the away games I went to on the train with a group of other people, one of whom included a young guy called Ben, who was doing a journalism course. And as part of that course, he decided he wanted to launch a fanzine. Now, fanzine culture has been a big part of Brighton. Ian, of course, knows very well how it's like with the fanzines. There wasn't one when we returned to Brighton. And so Ben decided to launch one, and he called it Keep the Faith. And he got all of his friends to write for him. Now, when you write for a fanzine, you typically write under a nom de plume, a pseudonym. So he said to me, "What's your nickname?" I didn't have one really. So I had to cast my mind back way back.
That was printable.
Yes. Way back to a previous job I had when we all had lecture set names on our desks, and we came in one morning to find that people had changed all our names. And my name, Andy Herriot, had been changed by somebody to Bandy Ferret. The Bandy dropped, the Ferret stuck, and Ferret has been my nickname ever since. So, yeah, started working for the fanzine, started writing a scurrilous column, a gossip column, if you like, ferreting out the gossip, I think was the subheading. And it would take the form almost like of a monthly diary, because we produced the fanzine once a month, and I'd say, on this day, this thing was happening. And I'd mix in real facts with a bit of scurrilous bits and pieces that I could pick up there. As much truth as possible. Didn't want to be sued, of course, but in true fanzine style. Worked for the fanzine for a couple of years, and the next thing I knew, I got a phone call from the head of media at the club, Paul Camlin, to say that Dick Knight had contacted him about this ferret who writes in the fanzine. I thought I was getting due for the high jump, you know. Blooming hell, Chairman Dick Knight wants to have a pop at me or something I've written about him. But no, Dick Knight had said to Paul, "This is exactly the sort of person we need writing for the website, not for the fanzine." So I jumped ship. I went from being a fanzine writer to a website columnist for the Albion in 2000. And really, that's where my Albion career started and lasted for 16 years.
Yeah, I mean, fanzines, you mentioned fanzines. The internet killed the fanzine, really, didn't it?
Yes, I mean, I think there's been a few attempts at fanzines subsequently, but...
I mean, we did Goldseye from 88 to 97, 100 issues, and regularly sold out. But I don't think you could do that now. I don't think the punters want something that they can buy. It's like... It is quite sad. It's almost become part of the disposable society. But we used to send our fanzine all over the world. In fact, when I go to Oz for the cricket, the Australian Brighton Hove Albion Supporters Club, which was the biggest core Goldseye mail order people, that and America. I think it was 9 in Australia and 8 in America, or 7 or 8 in America. So I'm going to go to one of their meetings in Perth, and they got over 400 members now. Amazing stuff. But no, fanzine.
You've gone global, Hart.
We went global before it was. But what I'm saying is, fanzines were really. Don't forget, it was the fanzine, i.e. Goldseye, that broke the gold standard being sold story.
Hence my comment, really, that fanzines has been a big part of Albion's history.
But the problem being, we weren't out.
No.
So because it was in July, we had to go to the Argus.
But fanzines take time to put together. Yeah. You're reliant on your writers. They're trying to write things, and inevitably they'll lean on issues And as you say, the internet catches you up, and by the time you've gone to print, the story's dead or it's moved on so far that what you've gone to print with doesn't make sense.
No, it's a very, very
Happy
sad.
days. Well, welcome, Andy, number one, and thanks for explaining that. And it is a shame about the fanzines, isn't it? I don't know if it's social media as well that has sort of kicked them into touch a bit more.
I mean, Manchester United used to have a really good one, Red Issue, didn't they? I mean, that was really scurrilous, and I think Rangers had a good one, and and it was a bygone era, but it was of its time.
So yes,
and it's sad that it's gone now. I mean, in 15 years' time, North Stand Chat might be a thing of the past. You don't know, do you?
So, I started working for the club in the media capacity on their website. At the time, the club had just signed up with a Football League initiative. All of the clubs in the Football League signed up to it. If you're familiar with club websites of the time, they all had the same look and feel, but the clubs had to provide the content. The league in their deals provided the structure. And so Paul, as head of media, recruited several people to help. We also had an internet television channel that I did a few spins on with Nicky Keeg-Shevlin, who was the Southern Sound presenter at the time. Eventually they realised that there was only room for one pretty one, so I was moved to the sidelines, and Nicky took over as the main frontage of that. So I carried on working for Paul in the media team for 4 or 5 seasons until Dean Wilkins took over as manager. And Dean was always very, very much into statistics and getting that out of the game, that extra 20% out of a game that you can get from looking at stats. Nowadays, of course, every Premiership manager has an armful of stats and an iPad during the game to tell him exactly what's going on. Back in the day, there was nothing really like that. Dean approached Paul and said he'd like somebody to compile some stats for him during the game. And did Paul have anybody free who could do that? Paul nominated myself because he knew from my day job I worked with numbers. And so I worked with Dean on statistics, match day statistics, performance analysis, you might say. And did that.
You will love this, then, Andy, because Harty always calls me the Stato.
Yeah,
but he does tend to catch me out, though,
Stato
quite regularly.
meets Stato. Yeah. So there you go.
Exactly, we're going to go head to head. So looking at the weekend then, Andy, so we've seen... I guess later on we're going to be talking a bit more about Huddersfield and Brighton's wins, because this is going to be one of our sort of topics later, and also the managerial situations at Everton and at Leicester. So putting those to one side, because we'll be on them later, some of the key moments to me, I guess first one I'd like to call out, an interesting one, I was at Wembley actually, was Spurs' destruction of Liverpool. Mm-hmm. Now, my question is, was it really a destruction of Liverpool? If you look at the stats here, Liverpool 64% possession, 12 shots to Spurs 14, but 7 on target to Spurs 6. So we have a couple of sort of high-profile defensive errors here, really masked what happened at Wembley. Did Spurs really smash Liverpool? Or was it just a couple of individual errors that have made it the scoreline look that way?
Sorry, Andy, we get Jeremy and the pacemakers coming in because he's so pro-Liverpool. It's not bloody true.
So what do you think, guys? You watched the game, did you? I take it?
I mean, I would say that, and this is a good rule to apply to just about any football match, take the goal, watch the 90-minute game, but with the goals edited out. And then ask somebody, okay, what was the result? Now, if you watched that game, Liverpool-Tottenham, and took the goals out, and let somebody watch the 80 or so minutes that's left, what do you think the man in the street would say the scoreline was? And based on the statistics and taking the goals out, you probably have said, 1-1 draw.
Absolutely. Look at this. He can come back every week, I'll say.
But obviously, football's not like that. Football's all about goals.
But let's go to the West Ham game on Friday night. And it was, again, I saw a match of the day, Saturday night, 65-35. But Brighton won 3-0. Mm. And we're a country mile. I think Spurs, and I really do think, if Spurs had been playing at White Hart Lane, they would have more than a serious challenge for Manchester City. Maybe Wembley will get in the way. But Spurs set up now to invite you on, and then they catch you on the counter-attack. And it's clearly working. Is it not?
Good. I mean, Harry Kane, right, was absolutely outstanding in that game. It was just a masterclass centre-forward performance. But I'm not, I was there at the game and
But all I've read about
is it wasn't a 4-1.
All I've read about is it was a 4-1.
I know.
But all I've read about is Liverpool's woes. Now, I am pleased that you've said that Harry Kane had a masterclass.
He did,
but
absolutely.
I haven't really seen that. All I've seen is that Liverpool is comic defending. There's issues with the keeper. There's issues with the back 4, 5, or whatever. And Klopp is on. Could he be on borrowed time? I don't know.
But that is today's media. They accentuate the negatives, not the positives. You're always gonna.
It's horrible.
You're always gonna get the negatives pulled out. So the team that loses, especially if it's a high-profile team like Liverpool, are going to get hammered more than the team that's beaten them.
But should we not be celebrating the beautiful game?
I guess the answer to that is what sells, what gets people reading the article on the website.
Okay, she sells.
And
can I just ask one question, Kev?
Yes.
How many tickets did Liverpool have?
For that game, well, you get 3,000, don't you, maximum?
Is that all you get?
You can't get any more than 3,000.
Because it was the highest ever Premiership gate ever, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's
81,000,
right. Liverpool, well, 3,000 is the Premier League max.
So there were 78,000 Spurs fans there.
Absolutely.
Max or minimum, they could give them more if they so desired. Surely, I think they have to give them 3,000.
It's 10%. It's 10% of your gate. So someone like Bournemouth, for example, because they've got a low capacity, only have to give like 1,500 or something.
Yeah, the minimum
or
it's 10% or 3,000
as a minimum.
Yes.
So if Tottenham had wanted to give Liverpool 10,000, they could have done. There's nothing to stop them doing that.
Looking at the section now, I don't think they did. To be honest.
Obviously not. No.
So if it's not really a question, as a regular at the Albion and not Liverpool, how did you end up getting a ticket for that then?
Well, that was just I was just in the right place at the right time.
You bought a ticket off a tout.
It was it was corporate. It was
corporate.
For a customer.
Here we go.
You see. And my son was very pleased.
That's a VAT man, though.
It's the third time I've taken him to Wembley to watch Liverpool, and they've lost every time. So I don't think he's ever going to want to go again, to be honest. But anyway, so that was sort of Liverpool over the weekend with Spurs. Bournemouth, massive win, only second win of the season for Eddie Howe, away to Stoke. What's your take there? I think, Harty, you've said you fancy Bournemouth, don't you, to survive?
I fancy Bournemouth to survive.
What about Stoke?
I think it is in that mini league because I did back Stoke to go down at the start of the season. We're going to talk about managerial changes a little bit later on, but I do wonder how long Mr. Coates is going to put up with Hughes at Stoke. I think,
I mean, it's strange, really, when you look back at clubs like Stoke that most people think are an established Premiership side these days. And I can, as somebody who really has been so Brighton over the years, I've tended to only pay lip service to the Premiership. I remember Stoke. I see Stoke as one of our Brighton rivals. You know, travelling up to the Britannia and
on the Friday nights. You remember when we went to my old Picasso?
Absolutely,
and it was the bloody traffic, wasn't it? It was terrible. We got there about 7:15.
So
Lee Steele, wasn't it?
Lee Steele,
we won.
Yeah, and Bobby was playing.
Peter Taylor.
Yeah,
2002 it was.
Something like that.
15 years ago.
But the whole point I'm getting at, Terry, is Stoke are not an established Premiership. There's probably only about 8 sides genuinely you can say are.
But what do you class as
someone who
someone there 7 seasons?
Someone who you'd be shocked to see relegated. Everton, for example.
No, but you can't. You see, but Andy, you're getting into that. You're too good to go down. I think it's only now. Spurs went down, didn't they, in 77? So I think now in the top flight. All right. Football did exist before 1992, so I think it is now only Everton
and Arsenal,
and I think everybody else has been relegated.
Yeah, even Man City. At their
no, Bournemouth haven't been relegated because they've gone up, haven't they? So
give them time.
Yeah, give them time. No, that is an interesting point, Andy. But what do you class?
I guess for me,
I mean, because you're saying shocked. I mean, we could see a big club go down this year. I don't think Everton will go down. I've lost my bet with you, and I freely admit that. But I would think that the next Everton manager will be there longer than Jurgen Klopp. I'll have double or quits.
I think Stoke, established in the sense of they've not been in a relegation fight, have they? They've been safe. mid-table, and even top 10 as well for a few seasons.
But are they getting into the Charlton scenario where the Charlton fans were moaning when they were finishing 10th? And they got Kirbishley out, didn't they? And then they went into a tailspin.
Well, Southampton fans last season only finishing 8th.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later, no doubt.
So into our topics for today's podcast. So we're going to cover credit where credit's due, which we've sort of got onto a bit there. Where do the smaller teams get credit for some of the great results, or do we focus on the negatives like Liverpool's defence, as you mentioned? So we've got a few examples of that. The management merry-go-round as well. Everton and Leicester. By the time this podcast goes out, I mean, the Leicester appointment may well have been made, but we will touch upon that. And as always, we'll wrap up with the Super Cool and Major Tool nominations. So let's kick off with credit where credit's due. And I think this is one, I mean, that examples we've spoken about, maybe Huddersfield, Manchester United. You've got Brighton against West Ham, 2 big wins for the promoted clubs. You could say Palace against Chelsea the other week. And I think your concern in particular, Harty, you're feeling that there's more time spent on the problems of the big clubs and debating them for 80% of the time and not focusing on what the other teams have delivered.
But you see, I think Brighton are every big as club as West Ham now. So I was really disappointed to come out of that ground Friday night.
They haven't got a 60,000 stadium, have they?
Yeah, no, but they don't rent their stadium.
No.
Brighton own their stadium,
I know, but it's
and
still
they can
got
fill
60,000.
it. Well, it is 60,000, but you do have to have 60,000 people. It's nice to have the majority of those 60,000 seats still sat in the 89th minute. Did you not think that was poor?
Well,
Did you not think that if they go down, which is possible, if they go down, are they going to fill it in the Championship every week? I don't think so.
But I don't think, you look at West Ham's history as well, I don't think you can call Brighton as big a club as West Ham. You look at history, you look at trophies, you look at European football.
No, potentially now.
I would accept.
Wolves were a big club. Blackburn Rovers were big. Blackpool were a big club.
Leeds,
but they're not now, are they? Leeds. But they're not a big club now. What I'm saying is potential now. I think Brighton are every bit as big as West Ham. Do you not agree with that then?
Potential's a big word in that sentence, isn't it?
If West Ham was still at the Berlin ground, then maybe. But having now got this tenure at the Olympic Stadium, I think it'd be, assuming they get over their current woes, I think it would be very difficult for Brighton to keep pace with West Ham over the next 10 years. Yes, there'll be seasons, of course, where we hope and expect Brighton will finish above them. But again, if you're looking back at and comparing who's the bigger club, I think now that they're at the Olympic Stadium...
You misheard. I'm saying that we are now. When we came out of that ground on Friday night, and I listened to TalkSport driving home, and all it was about how bad West Ham were, West Ham were. And it wasn't a minnow beating a bigger club. I think we are on a level playing field with them now, to a degree.
But it is our first season in the Premiership, remember. And again, the TalkSport journalists, the national media... Yes, they've seen Brighton coming up on the rails, but it's to them, Brighton are like Bournemouth. You and I probably both think Bournemouth are a small club for the Premiership. We don't think Brighton are. But the national media would see us in the same light as Bournemouth, just a new arrival into the Premier League.
I think Bournemouth are a great club and they're a well-run club. I'm dubious about the Defoe deal because that's silly money. I see he was out injured this week again. Kevin and I have both said it. The problem with Bournemouth now is if they move to this super stadium, there's a possibility by the time they get there, they could be in the Championship. Mm-hmm. You see, we did it the right way. That we ended up getting in the Premiership when we had the established stadium.
But back to this credit where credit's due, This is really the question here, isn't it? And I would actually say, I obviously was at the game, like you, Harty, and I'd recorded it and I had fast forward through and I saw, Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, to be honest, were extremely complimentary about Brighton, about Duncan Duffy, about Bruno, So I disagree, to be honest. I think Brighton did get a lot of credit for that game.
I'm just going, but not coming back on the radio and the following day. And they actually had a Brighton fan come on TalkSport about 11 o'clock on the Saturday morning and said, look, I've listened to 2 hours of how bad West Ham were. When are you actually going to say how good Brighton were? So there was a bias.
Okay, so maybe the bias then playing devil's advocate here,
Judge Jeffries,
Judge
Rinder,
the pundits watching the game live, your Nevilles, your Carragers, were giving Brighton the credit.
They did.
The media who may not have seen the game live on a Friday night, they could be doing other things instead, and have just reflected on the result and maybe seen brief highlights, have hammered West Ham. Pardon the pun. So again, it's a difference between a pundit watching the game live
and the story, the headlines. Like let's be honest, Slaven Bilic. There, you've got a manager who's been under threat for a while. And I guess a lot of people would have looked at that game and thought, is that the tipping point that's going to get him out the door? And then that becomes headlines
again. Well, let's flip it then, because we don't want to be too pro-Brighton, because this podcast goes round,
he says that every week.
round the globe. But I am. But again, Huddersfield, Manchester United. Huddersfield didn't get the credit for that result. No. Why
didn't they?
Because
Jose Mourinho came out and gave them credit. He actually, for once, came out in the press conference.
But they were talking about how Manchester United
lost to the better side.
And last night, Wolves, Man City. All I've seen today is Man City did win in the shootout, but all I've seen today is Man City and how poorly they played and blaming the football.
Yeah.
Where's the credit for Wolves for taking them 120 minutes?
Yeah. And Wolves might get through now because of this substitute thing, because with the rules.
I've seen no credit for Wolves at all. In fact, most of the stories today have been about Guardiola blaming the football.
Yeah, so it's not just about those other games.
The football's had a lot of press.
The topic is, Kev, credit where credit's due, and sometimes teams don't get it. I'm even going to defend Arsene Wenger here. It was all about Coman and how woeful Everton were. You know, nobody said Arsenal scored 5 goals away from home.
It is. I think it's. I get the point, because there's the bit about. I think the hook is about selling like papers and getting people ringing in. And I suppose maybe the Talk Sports scenario, they want people phoning into the show. And how many are going to ring in off the back of, wasn't Lewis Dunk fantastic the other night?
It was super,
versus how many are going to ring in to say,
29
should Bilic
crosses
go? You know, should West Ham, you know.
So if you like, the two questions they could ask is, Dunk for England, yes, no. Bilic to go, yes, no.
Yeah.
It's clearly the Bilic, yes, no, is going to get the most callers. Even though maybe Dunk should get an England call-up.
There was stuff on social media about that, wasn't there? Saying that Southgate was looking at Dunk for an England call-up.
You know, I thought both of them, Duffy and Dunk, were superb. There was a stat was on Match of the Day on Saturday night. West Ham put 29 crosses in, didn't they?
Jamie Carragher loved, honestly, he was waxing lyrical about, sort of old school defending to a degree. But he said it was great. I mean, the blocks and the clearance and crosses, it was phenomenal.
So I think my summary of the question is simply that negativity piques interest more than positivity, and that's why. In any
isn't
field,
that a shame?
Of course it's a shame, but it's the fact of life, you know. And it's not just in football; it's everywhere. But in football, particularly, they're always going to look for the negative angle, whatever it is, rather than the positive angle. And invariably, that's going to be the bigger clubs doing poorly rather than the smaller clubs doing well.
So, negatives and positives, right? Well, that will link us on nicely here, right, to this management merry-go-round. We've got two scenarios. I mean, we've mentioned on here, Harty, haven't we, about Koeman. Would they stick with him?
Where
would
did
they
Koeman
not?
go wrong?
Everton.
I mean, apart from the obvious where he didn't win enough games, we were talking about them as a top 7 side. They finished 7th last year.
They did.
Where did it go wrong? Where do you? I'm all right. You're a Liverpool fan, Kev, but where do you think it went wrong for him?
Well, I think he's. We talk about the press. I mean, I can't believe. I heard a comment made. I think it was Simon Jordan, the old Palace guy, saying he was a manager almost trying to get the sack. If you listen to his press conferences, every interview from Koeman in the last few weeks has been negative. There's been nothing for a fan to hook onto about how we're going to get out of this, how we're going to motivate. And all the talk is that he, I know it's a bit of a cliche, lost the dressing room, but they reckon the players thought he was playing too defensively. The players weren't getting motivated because they're talking about Unsworth at the moment. The one thing he'll do, he's got respect at that club, what he's done with the under-23s. And he will motivate them. So I think, why Koeman's gone that way, I don't know, because his track record is
but the thing
excellent.
He spent all that money on Sigurdsson and effectively played him in the wrong position. It's crazy.
It is. I mean, it is bizarre. But who do you think? You look at you got Unsworth, right, who's going to go in temporarily.
Yeah.
You look at the betting. Yeah, look at Sean Dyche 5-2, Thomas Tuchel, Dortmund. Then you're into Allardyce, Ancelotti, Moyes, Silva, my man crush, and then 20-1 gigs and all of that. So, I mean,
Well, I think Giggs is just lip service.
Who do Everton want though? Because before you answer that, guys, let me say Koeman. Okay, he's won 2 titles with Ajax and a double. He's won a Portuguese Cup with Benfica. He's won another title with PSV. He's won a Spanish Cup with Valencia. Southampton finished 7th and 6th, their highest ever. And now, after 18 months, after Everton finishing 7th last year, he gets the sack. What do they want?
Is that highest ever in the Premiership?
For Southampton?
Yeah.
6?
Yeah. No, I think they finished higher in 81-82.
Right.
In the Football League.
Premier League.
Before football didn't start.
6 in the Premier League.
Yeah.
He's broken into that top 6 with Southampton.
Yeah.
So what do Everton think they're going to get here? Well, Sean Dyche has had 2 promotions.
It's not going
to
to
touch it with a barge pole.
It's not going to be Sean Dyche.
Well, he won't count it out, will he? He's been asked. He could count it out himself from Leicester, but he didn't from Everton.
He might be a safe pair of hands, but is he going to win him any trophies? Not a chance. He's a top 6 manager. You're having a giraffe, aren't you? Sean Dyche? Nah. I
think he's a decent manager.
I don't think he could.
I think you're doing him a disservice.
I don't think he could survive against a changing room full of prima donnas. Show us your medals and that mentality. He's done well at Watford and Burnley, where they don't have those types of.
I'm sure he did a lot at Watford, though, did he? He's had a couple
Done
of
okay
promotions
at
at Burnley
But
and a relegation.
I think he was unfault. I think you're doing him a disservice there, Kev.
I don't see Sean Dyche being able to manage a side full of world-class players.
Well, listen to that resume of Koeman, and then that's not with his playing career. Dyche is 2 championship promotions in a Premier League relegation, and yet he's 5-2 to get this job.
Well, can I just go back on this? Show us your medals.
Yes.
Right. But do they ever say that to Jose Mourinho? Because he ain't got any.
Okay, but what he's done as a manager, it's okay. When you come into a dressing room...
but you can't... You have to get experience. This is like
you do have to get experience.
Yes. We had Mason Crane on as a guest a couple of weeks ago, and there's people going on, you're not experienced at Test cricket. Well, every Test cricketer has been an inexperienced Test cricketer, and every manager has been an inexperienced manager.
Yes, but you've got to learn the trade, but
you can't learn you have to be given a chance, Andy. I don't think he'll take it. I don't think he'll be offered it. He will stick at Burnley, and I can see.
I think he'll take it.
I can see Burnley being. I can see Burnley being getting like that Southampton if he beds in. I think.
But he's in the northwest, isn't he? Already, he probably wouldn't even have to move house. Everton's got a big brand. He'd look at that Everton squad and think that is underperforming massively. You know, he's got a great opportunity to just to come in and have an impact because it's gone so poorly.
I would hope loyalty kicks in. I would hope that he'll
think
been
that Burnley for a long time.
Burnley. I don't think
he would take it. It's a chance to manage a bigger club than he's currently managed, but I don't think it'll be offered.
Top 7 club.
Yeah. To go back to your point about experience, that's why Unsworth won't get it, regardless of what he does as a caretaker. No. He hasn't managed at this level. He's managed at all. He's turned down in the last 2 years Sligo Rovers and Kilmarnock. He's got no ambition to start learning at a lower level.
What was the club he went to that he had to leave very quick because his wife didn't realise where it was?
Wasn't that Harry Redknapp? Wasn't it West Ham he was going to sign for?
No, he actually signed, didn't he? And then he had to go to Aston Villa because his wife didn't realise where London was.
But no, so
it's always been there.
So Unsworth's got no experience and won't be appropriate.
Thomas Tuchel, the fans seem to want to go from the old Dortmund manager.
For me, that's the obvious shout. He's young and ambitious. He's surely desperate. I know we're going, but Tuchel's done it at Dortmund. I mean, to be fair, they finished.
What do you mean by done it? He's won 1 German Cup.
They finished second and third in the league, made the quarterfinals of the Champions League. That's experience that Dyche, Unsworth doesn't
I'm not sure he made the quarterfinals of the Champions League. He did it in the Europa, I think, because Liverpool knocked him out. Jurgen and the boys knocked him out, but it's 1 German Cup. Is that enough for Dortmund?
I just think it's a retrograde step. And
Tuchel or Dyche or both?
Just for domestic football. I just think it's another British manager missing out on a job.
Well, the only British manager I can see with a chance of that job and a chance of being successful at that job is David Moyes if he went back. But
they should never go back.
11-1.
Do they want him back?
I don't know, but of all the possible British candidates, for me, he's the only credible one. He's
on a roll, isn't he? After all, after Man United and Sunderland, and he managed in Spain. He's managed to trash every.
Well, yeah, exactly. He's done nothing. He's done nothing since.
So is he going back to his comfort zone?
Well, a chance to rebuild his career. Go back to where he's been.
Do you think that's I mean, you are king of the bookies here, son. I can't have a bet because I'm a director. If I could have a bet, would you advise me to have a bet on David Moyes?
No, to be honest, attractive. I would. Well, he's actually gone out to 28-1 this evening. Thomas Tuchel will be my tip, to be honest, because I think he would definitely take it. He's a young manager. Wants to come.
Is that good for domestic football?
Is it good for domestic football? Probably not, but.
I'll tell you what it will be good for the fans. I bet if you took a straw poll of Everton fans now and said out of that list, who would you like? I bet that Thomas Tuchel is the one they go for, because it's the type of football that Dortmund have played. The style, young, ambitious manager. I think he'd probably be their favourite.
I think they'd probably, to be honest, I think the fans would probably choose Ancelotti, but I don't see Ancelotti going back to a club as low as Everton. If he comes back to the Premiership at all, it'll be top 4, top 5 clubs.
So let's touch on. Let's touch on Leicester amongst this now. At the moment, talking about the betting, of course, Claude Puel is about 6-1 on, and he might have got even more than that. He looks like a certainty for that. And if we talk about popularity here, we're saying I think Tuchel would be popular for Everton fans. Now Puel will not be a popular appointment with Leicester fans, will he? I mean, he came out of Southampton
Andy said when we were talking in the kitchen before you got here, Kev, he did do well at Southampton.
Southampton, he took them to 8th place. He was effectively sacked for being too boring, playing too negative football, but he got them to the top 10 of the Premier League. Crumbs, Leicester City fans, they'd give anything to be boring and stable and top 10 now, wouldn't they? I think they'd jump at the chance.
It's got to be the right appointment, or else I can see them.
He has, exactly.
Touch and go.
He has.
Can't you?
It could be a good appointment for Brighton, Harton.
No. Appleton would be a good appointment for Brighton. Appleton getting the Leicester job, would be a good appointment for Brighton.
The one thing to remember, he finished 8th, and I do know a few Southampton fans, and I heard Letizia talking about it, and he obviously isn't popular, and the view being that on the face of it, you think, Southampton finished 8th. What a great season. There were a whole cluster of clubs with just a couple of points between them. And Southampton actually finished with 17 points less than the previous season under Koeman. So they saw a retrograde step in terms of football, how entertaining was it, and in what they got. I think it flattered him 8th, but they got to a League Cup final as well to try and balance that up, which they should have won, and they were very unlucky against Man United.
I mean, to be fair, he hasn't done an awful lot in football. He won the French Championship with Monaco, but that was a long time ago. But he has got that
Champions League semi-finals with Lyon as well.
He has got that
You're
Premier League
talking him
experience.
into the job, Kev.
I
looked at this yesterday when Harty told me this was a point to discuss, and he was 4-7 then. And to be honest, having looked at the candidates, I punted on him yesterday. So I'm very pleased that he looks a shoe-in now, because
6-1 on
that's
now.
my beer money for this weekend covered. Because you looked at the other potential candidates, Sean Dyche, we've talked about him.
He's already said he's not interested.
Pellegrini, he's earning pots of money in China. Would he come back? He might come back to the Premier League, but to Leicester, I
Chris
don't think so.
Hughton, 66-1 to take the Leicester job.
The only other one I thought was interesting, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen now because Puel is in talks, was Ryan Giggs. He's going to have to start his career somewhere. I also feel he should start in the lower leagues and learn his trade.
I think he should start.
Why is no one giving Giggs a chance?
But because I don't think you can gamble on it.
But I think Guardiola, Zinedine Zidane, these like star players are going straight in, and Giggs is a star player.
Yeah, he would get the dressing room.
3 or 4 years at Man U as assistant.
But they're going into all right. We're effective here too. I don't think. You've got Zidane and you've got Guardiola going into Barcelona, as you say, Real Madrid. I don't think you could give Giggs the Manchester United job now. Away.
Well, they did it.
I would agree with that.
How many years? He was number 2 for about 3 different managers, wasn't he? Giggs.
He was.
2.
Well, no. trying to think now, because
was he Moyes' number 2?
Was he Moyes' number 2?
Moyes, Van Gaal.
No, but
Moyes
Moyes had all his Everton lot in there, didn't he?
Yeah.
Moyes had Woods and Round.
But he was at the club for a good while. But you'd think someone, even like when Swansea job came up, I was really surprised he wasn't.
It is surprising no one's jumped him, and I actually feel
he
should. I know his ego won't allow him to manage any lower, but I think he should take a championship job really and learn his trade at that level. But
even then, that's a hell of a gamble because it's such a competitive league, and if it doesn't go right. You got people, he can't.
Alan Pardew.
Well, the other
for Leicester.
Yeah,
he's got more chance of Alan Partridge.
The other candidate possibly that we haven't mentioned and is British is Chris Coleman for Leicester. If Puel, for whatever reason, doesn't happen, I could see that as a potential alternative appointment.
Wales
for them.
want to extend his contract, don't they?
They do, but maybe his time's gone at international level. I know he hasn't managed in the Premier League for 10 years now, but
so if we get off the fence on this, I think we're all saying Puel looks to be a shoo-in. So for you guys, call it. Who's going to be the next Everton manager, Harty, in your opinion?
Reluctantly, I think you're right with the German.
Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah.
And for you?
That's who I've got, Thomas Tuchel.
As well. Yeah. I would agree.
Just one quick one though, because as I said, I have looked at the betting this evening, and somebody who's come in from 14 to 1 to 5 to 1 yesterday is Marco Silva, the current Watford manager. There's been a big.
If Marco Silva is killed, they will pull him in for
question. There's been a big.
Why would I kill him?
Yeah. You know that Alan Partridge episode when he goes in the room, there's all the pictures. That's his bedroom with Marco Silva.
The only thing I'd say about football management appointments is there's a lot of people who get to know about it a while before the appointment is made. There's been a lot of money for Silva. It is possible, just possible, that Everton have sounded out Watford about the level of compensation that might be necessary, and if that slipped out, that could explain the money going in.
I think he's the next Arsenal manager, Marco Silva.
You think so?
I think he's the next Arsenal. Yeah, he's at Watford already. He's moving close. He's even positioned himself geographically.
So I would say Thomas Tuchel, but if Watford were to take a few million in compensation, then Silva is an equally good candidate.
He'll end up at Barnet.
So, gentlemen, that takes us into our wrap-up. Of course, it's Super Cool versus Major Tool in terms of getting our nominations over the last week.
Yeah.
So, let's start off with Super Cool with you, Harty.
Right, Adam Barner, 9 years old, Huddersfield fan, found a fiver outside.
I didn't see this one.
And sent it to Adam Murray for scoring a goal.
Ah, I like that.
Sent him a fiver because he couldn't keep it because it wasn't his. So he wanted it to go to a good home. So he sent it to the Huddersfield player that scored against Manchester United. That's not a bad lad. And it actually, everyone's having a go at kids and stuff like that, and the youth of today and the Jeremy Kyle generation. But you got a kid there of 9 years old who's actually written a letter as well. That was the thing that really got me, was that he wrote a letter. It wasn't an email. It wasn't I've got a fiver, come and get it. Yeah. He sent them a letter by post with the £5 note in the letter.
Fantastic. And how about you?
Come on, Andy.
Okay, well, Mega Cool, I struggled a little bit. It was going to be Aguero. Had he scored last night, he'd have taken the Man City record of goals scored.
If he didn't have the dodgy football, he'd have been fine, wouldn't he?
But instead, and you're going to hate me, it's got to be that nutmeg by Dele Alli on Emery.
Yeah.
At the weekend. What a glorious little bit of nutmeg that was. And that was, if you're talking about Mega Cool, that was mega cool, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool. Well, I had. I thought Ronaldo's just won the FIFA World Player of the Year, isn't he? He got over 40% of the vote there. Kane, I would say as well. But I'm going to go just from Carabao Cup time with Eddie Nketiah. I don't know if you saw that. Came off the bench for Arsenal. Scored 2 goals, didn't he, to get the 2-1 win against Norwich. I think the first was within about 15 seconds of coming on. It sort of reminded me of old Michael Owen banging one in against, it was at Selhurst, wasn't it, against Wimbledon back in '96. When you see that, it's great, isn't it, when you see a young kid come on, 16-17. Rashford did it as well, didn't he? And just turning a game like that. So let's hope we hear more from him as well.
We had it with Jake Robinson, didn't we?
Yeah.
Where did it all go wrong?
So, major tool. So, Andy, from your perspective, a major tool from the weekend.
Okay, it's a little bit tricky because mine requires video evidence, which isn't great for a podcast. But
people can Google.
But you can Google this and they'll easily find it. It was last Saturday in Thailand. And the goalkeeper for
keep it to sporting.
The goalkeeper for
one of your videos you send
I'm going to show you two in a minute, and you can react and explain to the listeners what's going on. It's a cup semi-final. It's gone to a penalty shootout. It is 19 all, and the goalkeeper thinks they've missed. And I'll let you see this, and you can have a little.
You're going to have to commentate for our listeners here, Andy, as to what happened.
Okay, so he's taken the shot. He's hit the bar. It's bounced back. The goalkeeper is celebrating. He's running up the pitch to his teammates, but the backspin from the ball after hitting the bar, it's landed on the penalty spot and it's backspun all the way back into the goal. The goal counts and the goalkeeper's team loses because he went off celebrating too early. He is the major tool of the week. So, Google it. It'll still be out there for a while, I'm sure. Just type in Thailand goalkeeper. You'll
make sure you put goalkeeper. We have young kids listening.
You'll
to this.
find
it
was amazing. I must have had to watch it 20 times yesterday when I first saw it. It's unbelievable.
Marvellous stuff.
And Harty,
major tool. FIFA.
You've gone from the FA to
FIFA for giving the Celtic fans an award. I think you actually need to Google and look in the last 20 years how many times Celtic fans have been charged over bad behaviour and how we can turn around and now give them an award for being marvellous fans.
And was that award linked to the Lisbon Lions, wasn't it? Did they base it on just like a one-off thing?
No, it was for the Celtic fans, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, but I think
but that was 50 years ago.
But because of they did for the Lisbon Lions in the ground, at the event, at the game and all that.
Then so we'll forget all the bigotry and the hatred. And we'll do that because they did a little mural for the Lisbon Lions. Great story, the Lisbon Lions. Don't get me wrong. I just think that they probably need to have a look at these things. I think all these FIFA awards are all a bit bent anyway, aren't they?
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Well, for me, I thought, again, I've gone all Carabao Cup this week, but I thought Papa Soare for Palace, who, after getting hammered 4-1 by Bristol City, thought it would be a great idea to throw his shirt into the Palace fans, and of course immediately got it thrown back at him. Which, I mean, what goes through your head as a player to walk off and throw your shirt into the crowd after a 4-1 defeat to Bristol City?
But that happened at the Albion, didn't it? Jamie O'Hara threw his into when Wolves played the Albion on the last.
It was ironic. He'd been booed the entire game because the Wolves fan. He was in, I don't know, he was about 45 grand a week or something, and they felt he was just taking the money and not giving anything for it. They booed him the whole match, and as you say, he walked over. He was very polite. He thanked them, he clapped them, he threw his shirt
and
they threw it straight back again, yeah.
Crazy.
There you go.
But he wasn't quite so complimentary about them down the tunnel later on.
Good days.
Well, thank you, Andy, for joining us. It's been really great to have you on, and I think, as usual for everyone out there, as we mentioned, you can get this on iTunes, you get it on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all the usual routes. So do have a listen, share it out there with your friends, and we shall return, Mr. Hart,
next week. Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Andy. See you again soon.
Thank you.